Beneath the endless dunes of the Sahara, could an ancient civilization be sleeping in silence? What if the desert's vast emptiness hides forgotten cities of glass and gold? Some believe cataclysms buried entire worlds below. Could the Sahara's mystery be more than sand, a vault of our lost beginnings waiting to be unearthed? Long ago, before the Sahara became the world's largest hot desert, it was a land filled with lakes, grasslands, and winding rivers. Elephants, giraffes, and crocodiles roamed freely across open plains. Early humans lived there too, carving images of these animals into stone, images still found today in caves far from the nearest town. These scenes tell of a time when the Sahara breathed with life. But something shifted. The rain stopped, the earth cracked, and rivers faded into dust. Year by year, the green vanished. Winds carried sand across the land, burying the past. Cities turned into ruins, and ruins into shadows. Today, the Sahara is a sea of silence, but signs remain that something powerful once thrived beneath it. Satellite images taken from far above reveal strange formations, massive rings, straight lines, and geometric shapes spread across the desert floor. Some are so large they can only be seen from the sky. These aren't natural curves. They look like foundations, like the outlines of walls or roads swallowed by time. One formation, known as the Richat structure in Mauritania, looks exactly like a giant eye. It stretches over 20 miles wide. Its round layers almost too perfect. Geologists say it formed naturally, but others aren't so sure. Some believe it may have once been a city, maybe even a capital, lost to a disaster no one remembers. Nearby, old maps tell more secrets, drawn centuries ago by travelers and explorers. Some show rivers flowing through places now dry as bone. Others mark cities that no longer exist. One map, copied by a famous cartographer, places a walled kingdom deep within the desert, guarded by stone towers and said to hold treasures of knowledge. Who built these cities, and what happened to them? Stories from local tribes tell of a people who came from the stars. They were tall and wise, with glowing eyes, and they taught farming, building, and the secrets of the heavens. These beings, known in some legends as sky teachers or watchers, disappeared when the sky turned dark and the earth cracked open. Some say they went underground, sealing their doors behind them. Could these tales be more than myth? Could these watchers be the same as the Anunnaki, spoken of in Mesopotamian tablets as powerful beings from beyond the stars? If the Anunnaki truly walked the earth, is it possible they left behind colonies or knowledge in lands we no longer remember? And if they did, could the Sahara be hiding one of their oldest outposts, forgotten by history, buried by time? Strange tools and fragments have been found deep beneath the sand. Metallic objects that don't match any known culture, carvings with unknown scripts, and stones shaped by hands long turned to dust. They hint at a people with skills far beyond what we expect from ancient tribes. Why are these discoveries kept quiet? Why are some areas suddenly closed to researchers after such finds are reported? There are places in the Sahara that locals refuse to enter, saying the wind carries voices there, and that machines buried below still hum softly at night. Some researchers have recorded odd pulses of energy in these places, unexplained signals that seem to come from beneath the earth. Could this mean something still works below the sand? Is it possible the Sahara's silence isn't just the silence of death, but of sleep? A sleep that has lasted thousands of years, waiting to be disturbed. The more we uncover, the more the desert seems to whisper. It invites questions, it hides answers, and perhaps It protects something we are not yet meant to find. What if the desert we know today is only a mask, hiding a paradise that once fed empires? The sands may cover the truth, but traces of life still whisper below. Join the search for the lost green Sahara and uncover what humanity forgot. Hit like and subscribe for more forgotten worlds waiting to be rediscovered. The Sahara's silence began to crack when science started listening. Beneath thousands of feet of sand, researchers uncovered hard data that challenged everything we believed about ancient North Africa. Deep core samples drilled from buried lake beds revealed layers of silt, pollen, and fossils, proving that lush vegetation once covered this land for thousands of years. These weren't scattered patches of greenery. They were signs of rivers, forests, and giant freshwater lakes that dwarfed many modern ones. Remote sensing tools showed dry riverbeds running like veins under the sand, some even connecting to the Nile. But as geologists examined these findings, archaeologists made their own startling discoveries. In several regions across Niger, Chad, and Libya, they unearthed bones, pottery, and tools, not just old, but impossibly advanced for their age. Some settlements dated back nearly 10,000 years, well before the first stones of the pyramids were laid. At Gobero, an ancient lakeside site, scientists found skeletons of a people buried with care and honor. Men, women, and children, placed in graceful positions, some holding hands, others surrounded by flowers. Jewelry made of shells, tools carved from stone, and pottery with detailed patterns were all buried with them. These weren't crude artifacts from nomadic wanderers. They told the story of a community that valued art, memory, and possibly a deeper spiritual order. But the questions ran deeper. How did a culture at such an early stage in human development build with such symmetry and refinement? Where did they get their knowledge of design, of astronomy, of timekeeping? Could these early desert dwellers have received knowledge from a source long forgotten, one not born of Earth alone? Some theorists began comparing Saharan finds to legends from Mesopotamia and Egypt. In both cultures, texts describe divine visitors who taught humans how to farm, build, and govern. They were said to be tall, radiant beings who came down from the sky and left just as mysteriously. Among the most debated of these visitors were the Anunnaki. Could a branch of these ancient beings have reached the Sahara before it dried? If so, did they leave behind blueprints for cities that now lie beneath the dunes? Climate researchers agree that the Sahara's transformation into desert was swift and brutal. Within just a few centuries, rainfall vanished, and the land cracked. Many believe this was due to changes in Earth's orbit and tilt. But others question the speed. Could a cataclysmic event have triggered this collapse? There are theories, though unproven, of solar flares, asteroid impacts, or even artificial manipulation of the weather. If any of these were true, who or what might have been responsible? And what were they trying to erase? What stands out most in the archaeological record is not what was found, but what's missing. There are massive gaps in the chain of knowledge. Techniques appear, then vanish. Tools evolve, then disappear. Was there a guiding force pulling these early humans forward, only to vanish when the climate collapsed? Could it be that when the skies dried, the mentors of the Sahara simply returned underground or to the stars, leaving only broken clues behind? Today, modern scans continue to reveal more secrets. Subtle rectangular shapes show up beneath the sand, lined up with the stars. One researcher even found a buried wall stretching for miles, its angles too perfect to be natural. Who built this wall? Was it a boundary, a path, or part of something much larger, something we were never meant to uncover? The further scientists dig, the more they find themselves caught between science and myth. And in the vast, empty spaces between data and legend, a silent question lingers. Did a great civilization once live in harmony with the land before it was swallowed whole? And if so, did they vanish with the winds, or did they leave something behind, still waiting to be found beneath the dust of forgotten time? For centuries, explorers crossed the outer edges of the Sahara with worn boots, sunburned skin, and hand-drawn maps that carried secrets few dared to believe. Long before satellites and scanning tools, cartographers of the ancient and medieval worlds recorded what they saw, or what they were told, by those who lived in the desert's shadow. Among their maps are curious drawings, long winding rivers that run through the heart of the Sahara, empty basins labeled as lakes, and most striking of all, large circular shapes where today there is only sand. Some maps speak of cities surrounded by walls, or strange mountains shaped like rings. To the modern eye, these features don't belong. There are no rivers, no lakes, and certainly no cities in those places now. So were these early mapmakers simply wrong, or were they recording what they, or their sources, actually saw before the desert swallowed it all? The debate among scholars is sharp. Many argue that these features were myths, copied again and again through centuries without fact-checking. Yet others point to the consistency. Different maps from different times, made by different hands in distant lands, show many of the same patterns. How could that be a coincidence? One of the most compelling examples is a map drawn by the famous Greek geographer Claudius Ptolemy. His work, copied over generations, places a massive river system flowing from the west of Africa toward the Nile. Another comes from the Arab explorer al-Idrisi, who described cities with gardens and markets in regions now dry and desolate. Later, European mapmakers in the Age of Discovery added their own markings, some even naming regions as home to great stone circles, ringed walls, and kingdoms of gold hidden behind seas of sand. One name appears more than once across different maps. A circular landform in the west-central Sahara, drawn with near-perfect symmetry. Some believe this may refer to the Richat structure, the so-called Eye of the Sahara, now considered a natural formation. But could these maps suggest it was once a known place? Maybe even a city remembered through oral tradition? If so, who lived there? And why did its memory remain while its walls did not? Some theorists propose that these structures were not imagined but witnessed, either by ancient desert traders, local tribes, or perhaps even passed down from a time before writing. Could these maps be relics of a memory older than history itself? Could they have captured a glimpse of the Sahara before it turned to dust, when rivers still flowed and something powerful stood where sand now lies? And if these maps are to be believed, why is their information so often dismissed? Is it because the idea of a civilization hidden under the Sahara challenges too many assumptions about human history? Or is there something more, something being quietly kept out of view? Modern satellite imaging has begun to match some of these ancient sketches. Faint impressions of riverbeds line up with drawn waterways. Circular patterns appear in the same places where maps once marked cities. The match is far from exact, but close enough to stir curiosity. Researchers and independent historians have started layering ancient maps over modern desert scans, revealing alignments that suggest these cartographers may have known more than we thought. Could they have drawn from a source we no longer understand? Perhaps older records that have since been lost or suppressed? And what if those original records were not entirely human in origin? If the Anunnaki or other advanced visitors once moved across this planet, teaching and shaping early civilizations, could their influence have left behind maps that found their way into ancient libraries, only to be copied again and again by those who did not fully understand what they were preserving? The whispers from these maps refuse to be silenced. They call into question our timeline, our knowledge, and our place in a much older story. As the sands continue to shift and our tools improve, we may one day find out whether these maps were guesswork or quiet warnings from a forgotten world. In the heart of Mauritania lies a structure so vast and mysterious that it can only be fully seen from space. Known today as the Richat structure, or more famously, the Eye of the Sahara, this massive geological formation has stirred debate for decades. Spanning nearly 30 miles across, it is shaped in near-perfect concentric rings, like a giant fingerprint pressed into the Earth's crust. At ground level, it appears as weathered stone and ridges, but from above, it transforms into something almost deliberate, geometric, organized, precise. Scientists have long described it as a natural formation, the result of erosion, uplift, and time. Yet others find its form too intentional to be accidental. When viewed through satellite imagery, the rings appear evenly spaced, and at the center lies a circular core, almost like the heart of a design. What if this was never meant to be a geological puzzle, but the ruins of a forgotten city, one so large it could only be mapped from the sky? Some researchers have drawn comparisons between the Eye of the Sahara and descriptions from ancient texts. Plato, writing about the legendary city of Atlantis, described a city made of alternating rings of land and water, with a central island at its core. Though many associate Atlantis with the ocean, others suggest that Plato's story may have been symbolic or misinterpreted over time. Could the Eye be what remains of a once great capital, misunderstood by history and misplaced by scholars? As theories rise, so do discoveries. Around the Richat structure, explorers have found unusual stone artifacts, carvings that appear too deliberate for natural rock, and formations that some argue resemble collapsed structures. Geologists point to natural explanations, yet questions linger. Why does the formation so closely match ancient descriptions of a ringed city? And why does its alignment appear to mirror certain celestial patterns? Patterns that would require advanced knowledge of astronomy to plan. Could it be that this site once held a center of power or worship? A place built with knowledge far ahead of its time? If the Green Sahara once supported large populations, as we now know it did, then a central city or capital would not be unthinkable. But what kind of civilization would choose such a design? Some believe the rings were symbolic, a way to represent balance, unity, or harmony with the heavens. Others propose a more technical reason, suggesting the rings were used to distribute water, wind, or energy through advanced engineering. And if so, who had that level of understanding in such an ancient time? Could this be another silent trace of the Anunnaki, those mysterious teachers from Mesopotamian lore, said to possess both technological and spiritual wisdom? If they traveled beyond the Tigris and Euphrates, could they have built or inspired the building of such a site deep within Africa? Satellite data shows that the Richat structure sits along ancient trade routes, now buried by sand. Could this have once been a cultural or spiritual hub, linking regions long before we believed such networks existed? And if it was, why is it barely mentioned in historical texts? Why is a structure so massive, so unique, and so visible from orbit, absent from the pages of human memory? Could it be that this site was intentionally forgotten, erased from history to protect a greater secret? Or did it simply fade as the climate changed, buried under the same winds that silenced the rest of the Sahara? The Eye of the Sahara watches still, unmoving, unblinking. It draws the gaze of satellites, dreamers, and scholars alike. And as its perfect circles continue to challenge our understanding of the past, one question grows louder. Is this formation a quirk of nature, or the ghost of a city that once held the heart of a lost civilization? As technology pushed further into the unknown, the Sahara began to whisper secrets long buried beneath its golden surface. Advanced ground-penetrating radar and satellite scanning systems were deployed across key regions, and what they found startled even seasoned scientists. Beneath the sand, deep within the folds of the desert, lay patterns that defied nature's random touch. Rectangular outlines stretched for miles. Thick, linear shadows hinted at walls, corridors, and geometric designs buried too deep to be natural formations. In one zone northwest of the Eye of the Sahara, scans revealed a grid-like pattern, rows and columns set out with an accuracy difficult to explain without advanced tools. Could these be the foundations of a city, covered by thousands of years of shifting dunes? Geologists responded with caution, claiming the patterns were likely the result of fractured rock layers or erosion. Yet others pushed back, noting the regularity of the angles and their startling resemblance to man-made structures. Could coincidence shape stone into hallways and corners so precise? Or were scientists brushing off discoveries that challenged the current understanding of ancient history? Theories swirled. Independent researchers began overlaying satellite scans with ancient maps and tribal oral traditions, and the correlations were uncanny. Some of the buried shapes aligned with forgotten trade routes and sacred sites once whispered about by desert nomads. Others mirrored star patterns, suggesting an intention behind the layout that extended beyond architecture. Was this an ancient city built to reflect the sky, like the pyramids of Giza? As attention turned to excavation, a private team, operating near one of the radar-flagged zones, unearthed something remarkable. Among the sandstone and dust, they discovered smooth, flat stones cut into perfect rectangles. Unusual enough in such a natural setting, but it was the markings on them that sparked even greater mystery. Each stone bore etchings, symbols not recognized by linguists or historians. They weren't hieroglyphs, nor were they related to known Berber, Egyptian, or Sumerian scripts. Some resembled stars or waves. Others looked like energy lines or concentric circles. One slab appeared to contain what looked like a map, intersecting lines and points, drawn with astonishing symmetry. Experts examined the markings, but no modern language or symbol set matched. Were they a lost language? Or were they something else entirely? Some pointed out similarities between the shapes and symbols found in ancient Mesopotamia, particularly those associated with the Anunnaki mythos. Could this forgotten site share roots with the legendary visitors said to have brought knowledge to early man? And if so, were these stones part of a greater archive, buried intentionally to protect knowledge not meant for all eyes? Even more mysterious was the arrangement of the stones. They were laid out in a pattern that hinted at ceremonial use, like a code or blueprint designed to be seen from above. Could these artifacts be remnants of an advanced, pre-desert civilization? A people who not only lived but built and designed with vision and purpose? If the Sahara was once green and full of life, as recent evidence suggests, then large settlements would be expected. But these markings and precise layouts suggest something beyond survival. They hint at culture, science, and possibly even cosmic alignment. Could this buried site have served as a school, a temple, or perhaps a vault? What knowledge did these people leave behind, now locked beneath the sands? And why has there been so little effort to dig deeper, to uncover what these scans have so clearly revealed? Some speculate that funding for major excavations has been quietly blocked, that permits are delayed or denied, and that findings go unpublished. Why would authorities fear what lies beneath the dunes? Is the truth so powerful that it must be hidden? Or is someone protecting something still active, still pulsing below the ground? The Sahara continues to guard its silence, but the dunes shift slowly, and every grain of sand reveals more of a design that may not be natural at all. The deeper we look, the clearer the shapes become, and the question grows heavier. Did something once live here? Something organized, intelligent, and far older than we dare to believe. For generations, the Tuareg people have roamed the harsh beauty of the Sahara, guided not just by the stars, but by stories passed down around flickering desert fires. These are not simply tales for passing the time. They are oral records, spoken with care, layered with meaning, and held with deep respect. Among their oldest stories is one that echoes across distant oases and scattered camps, the legend of the gods of the deep sands. According to Tuareg elders, these beings were not gods in the divine sense, but travelers, tall, radiant figures who came from the sky during an age when the desert was still green and full of life. They are said to have arrived in ships of light, stepping down like shadows made of gold, their voices low and humming like distant thunder. The elders say these visitors brought wisdom. They taught the ancestors how to read the stars, how to follow the winds, and how to speak with the earth. They shared the secrets of metal, stone, and time. The Tuareg believe that their knowledge of navigation, astronomy, and even metallurgy comes from these early encounters. In some versions, the visitors lived among the people for many years, walking the sands, drawing patterns in the soil that would later become sacred roots. Then came a storm, not of wind and dust, but of silence, fire, and sky. The old ones say it split the heavens open. When the light faded, the visitors did not flee back into the stars. Instead, they entered the earth through hidden doors, vanishing into caverns below. These caves, still feared today, are found in places where compasses spin and the air grows thick. The Tuareg avoid them. They say the gods sleep beneath. What if these legends are more than stories? Could they be distorted memories of real events, passed down for thousands of years? If so, who were these sky teachers? Were they the same as the Anunnaki, the beings from Mesopotamian records who descended from the heavens to guide humanity? Could the Tuareg myths be a local reflection of a global pattern, one where ancient civilizations remembered distant visitors as gods? Some Tuareg petroglyphs carved into stone show tall figures beside stars, circles in the sky, and lines connecting earth and heavens. Others depict what look like portals or underground spirals. One in particular, found near the Hagar Mountains, shows a figure reaching toward the ground, surrounded by strange symbols not found in any known script. Linguists and anthropologists have struggled to interpret them, but to the Tuareg, they are sacred, not to be explained but respected, and perhaps that respect has preserved something science is only now beginning to uncover. Across the same regions where these legends thrive, satellite scans have revealed anomalies, subterranean voids, geometric outlines, and circular chambers buried deep beneath the sand. Could these be the very places described in the stories? Could the gods of the deep sands have left behind vaults or sanctuaries, their entrances sealed beneath dunes and time? Some archaeologists dismiss the connection, calling it coincidence. Yet the Tuareg have tracked stars and traded across continents long before European maps even existed. Their knowledge of wind, stone, and distance is unmatched. Could it be that their memories carry more truth than we're willing to admit? And if so, what happens if someone opens one of those forbidden places? Would they find ancient technology, sealed wisdom, or perhaps warnings left behind by those who saw a future we now inhabit? A growing number of researchers are beginning to listen, not just to the data, but to the people who have walked the land for centuries. For in these voices lies a living archive of stars once charted, of beings once met, and of doors that still wait beneath the sands. Perhaps the Tuareg are not guarding myths, but protecting something sacred, something buried by time, but not forgotten. And as their stories ripple across the desert like wind across dunes, we are left to wonder, were they alone in dreaming these tales? Or did they once walk beside those who came from the sky and vanished into the earth? Beneath the still, endless sands of the Sahara, something remarkable stirs. Not a myth, not a whisper, but the echo of flowing water now long gone. Using deep radar imaging and satellite data, scientists have begun to trace what can only be described as ghost rivers. Massive channels, winding and branching, carved under layers of sediment and time. These are not minor streams or accidental formations. They are wide, well-structured pathways that once held vast quantities of fresh water, some as large as modern rivers. Stretching for hundreds of miles, these buried channels connect regions now thought uninhabitable, linking the heart of the Sahara to the fertile lands of the Nile. One such channel, recently mapped with extraordinary precision, appears to have once served as a direct corridor between present-day Chad and the Nile Valley. If these ancient waterways were active during the time the Sahara was green, then they would have allowed travel, trade, and migration across areas now deemed too harsh to survive. Could entire cities have sprung up along these hidden rivers, their people moving between settlements by boat, carrying goods, ideas, and perhaps even stories of the stars? The evidence is growing. In several spots where these ancient rivers bend and branch, researchers have detected clusters of buried shapes, symmetrical patterns, rectangular voids, and ringed outlines that hint at structures lost to history. Some lie near known archaeological sites, but others are in places untouched by modern exploration. What kind of civilization once flourished along these waterways? And why has their presence remained so hidden, not just beneath the sands, but from the pages of history? Some geologists argue that the rivers dried up slowly, vanishing as climate cycles shifted. Others suspect something more sudden, an event, perhaps, that not only dried the rivers but erased the civilizations that once thrived beside them. Could a natural disaster have changed the flow of life? Or might these ancient societies have deliberately abandoned the surface, descending underground before the end came? What if these waterways were not only for transport, but part of a much greater system, an interconnected network designed for energy, movement, or communication? Some theorists even suggest these channels were aligned with celestial bodies, used in rituals, or mapped by ancient astronomers with knowledge we still struggle to understand. If the Anunnaki legends carry weight, could they have traveled these rivers, guiding early humans along their shores, teaching them the ways of stone and star before vanishing once again beneath the earth? In one particularly remote area of southern Libya, radar revealed what looks like a submerged harbor, its shape semicircular, with stone outlines that could match ancient docks. There is no official record of any city there, yet oral tradition speaks of a lost kingdom that controlled water and wind. Are these the last fingerprints of a culture whose roots reach deeper than we've dared imagine? The possibility that a grand civilization once sailed these now buried rivers is no longer just fantasy. With each scan, each data point, the evidence builds. The past is not dry. It is soaked in the memory of water, flowing still beneath the surface. If we follow these silent currents long enough, what might we find at their source? Could the mouth of these hidden rivers lead us to the heart of the forgotten world? And if so, what did they carry? Not just in goods or travelers, but in ideas, technologies, and stories waiting to rise again with the dust. Deep beneath layers of ancient rock and hardened sediment, discoveries have begun to surface that challenge everything we know about early human history. In isolated dig sites scattered across the southern Sahara, particularly in regions once mapped as fertile and filled with water, archaeologists have unearthed objects that defy explanation. These are not the crude tools of Stone Age tribes. They are metallic plates, rods, and finely crafted instruments, etched with markings no known culture has ever used. Some are shaped like gears, others like tools. Yet none match the technology of the eras to which the soil suggests they belong. Many were found embedded in rock layers that predate the rise of Mesopotamia and Egypt, suggesting an age of over 10,000 years. Some even deeper. Initial tests using radiometric dating and spectrometry reveal startling results. The metal alloys in these artifacts do not match anything known to have been smelted or refined in prehistoric times. One particular piece, an angular rod, smooth and unnaturally lightweight, was composed of a blend of titanium and traces of other rare elements. Such a mixture should have been impossible for early civilizations to produce, yet there it was, resting beneath rock that had not been disturbed for thousands of years. The engraved plates show something equally strange. Their symbols are arranged in rows, neither script nor decoration, but something else entirely. Perhaps data, perhaps instructions. Their spacing is consistent, their depth precise. And the tools needed to carve such fine etchings would require not only a steady hand, but magnification and precision no ancient workshop possessed. Who created these? And why were they buried so deep, in places unreachable without modern tools? As word spread of the findings, a few institutions quickly stepped in. Some artifacts were taken for further analysis and have not been publicly seen since. Other discoveries were dismissed as hoaxes or misidentified scrap. Yet the field reports remain. Among independent researchers, a quiet term began to circulate. Impossible civilization. The idea suggests a culture so far back in history and so far advanced that it would rewrite everything we believe about humanity's origins. Could it be that this civilization existed before the end of the last ice age, when the Sahara was green and the polar caps still heavy with frozen silence? Could these artifacts be remnants from a time before our collective memory began? And if so, who were they? Were they human at all? Some theorists draw links to the Anunnaki once again, pointing to Mesopotamian myths, where divine beings brought tools, knowledge, and materials from the sky. Were these items left behind by those beings, or by the civilizations they helped spark? The tools show little sign of wear, suggesting they were either used with care or stored for future use. Could they have belonged to explorers, builders, or scientists? Some researchers suggest they were not used for war or farming, but for measuring, mapping, or channeling energy. Tools not of survival, but of advancement. One artifact, shaped like a triangle with hollow channels running through its edges, was found alongside crystallized remains of what may have been a power source. Its design appears to focus vibration or sound, technology our ancestors shouldn't have had. Could this be part of a forgotten science, one that harnessed the Earth's own frequencies or the movement of water and air? And if these tools are just fragments of a greater system, what remains hidden deeper in the Sahara's belly? Have we only scratched the surface of an ancient machine buried under layers of silence? The implications are enormous. If even one of these objects is genuine and correctly dated, then we are not the first to touch the edge of advanced knowledge. We are rediscovering it. And the Sahara, long viewed as a dead zone, may in truth be the tomb of brilliance, an ancient vault where technology, memory, and purpose were sealed away, waiting for us to find them again. In a network of caves hidden along the worn ridges of the central Sahara, strange carvings stretch across stone walls that have not seen sunlight in thousands of years. These are not the crude, simple drawings of hunting scenes or animals found in many prehistoric shelters. These are different, more advanced, more deliberate. They show figures unlike any known early culture. Tall and robed, working in unison to move and shape massive stones. But what captures the attention of those who study them isn't just the size of the blocks or the coordination of the builders. It is the tools. In these carvings, beams of light or arcs of energy appear to rise from handheld devices directed at the stones. The shapes suggest motion, vibration, or force, not physical touch. In some images, entire blocks seem to float or hover as they are positioned into place. These depictions are surrounded by symbols, most of them still untranslated, but eerily consistent across caves, separated by miles of sand and time. How could early desert people have imagined tools they could not build? Or were they not imagining at all, but recording something real, something witnessed and passed down? The debate among scholars is fierce. Some say the carvings are symbolic, expressing power or magic through visual metaphor. Others believe they could be distorted memories of lost technologies, captured by those who lived in a fading era. Could these be echoes of an ancient people who built with forces we no longer understand? If so, and why did their knowledge vanish? Local Tuareg legends speak of sky people who could command stone and sound, who taught their ancestors how to listen to the earth before vanishing into the sand. Could these cave images be the Tuareg's ancestors? Or even the sky people themselves? Some researchers have pointed out the way the carved tools are held, with care, with focus, as if they required training. The beams seem to come from stones or metal shapes that resemble tuning forks, staffs, or even boxes. None of them resemble hammers or chisels. One theory suggests these tools were based on sound, resonant frequencies used to lift or cut stone. In parts of the world like Egypt and Peru, similar theories have emerged around the precision-cut stones of ancient temples. Could this lost building method have once been global? A shared knowledge passed down from a time when the world was more connected or more advanced than we believe? If these forgotten builders used resonance to shape stone, what else might they have been capable of? Could they have used sound to heal, to store memory, or to communicate across distances? And if this knowledge existed, who took it underground? One particular cave painting, deeper than the others, shows a spiral tower rising into the sky, with light beaming from its tip. Around it, robed figures hold their tools high, as if charging the structure itself. It resembles a generator or temple. Some believe it may have been both. Could this be a representation of a forgotten energy system? One that relied not on wires and fuel, but on harmony and alignment with the earth? Could these builders have understood natural forces in ways we have forgotten? And if so, is it possible that they did not disappear, but chose to leave their knowledge hidden, waiting for a time when it might be understood once more? As more caves are discovered, more questions rise from the stone. The carvings become more complex, their patterns more geometric, more intentional. This was not simple art. It was memory, etched into rock to survive time itself. And if we are willing to see beyond myth, beyond metaphor, we may find that the builders of the Sahara were not only real, but once held a knowledge far beyond our own, a knowledge now buried in silence, waiting to be remembered. The Sahara was not always a sea of silence. Once, long ago, it was alive with rivers, grasslands, lakes, and rain. But then, something changed. The skies closed, the water vanished, the trees turned to dust. What was left behind became the largest hot desert on Earth. For decades, scientists believed this change happened slowly, over thousands of years. But recent climate models, drawn from lakebed sediments, fossil pollen, and isotope data, suggests something more alarming. The transition from green paradise to barren wasteland may have happened in a matter of centuries, or even decades. What could trigger such a dramatic collapse? The evidence points to a sudden shift in monsoon patterns, perhaps caused by changes in the Earth's orbit or tilt. But was that all? Some researchers are beginning to ask darker questions. Could a cataclysm, natural or not, have torn through the region, not just drying it out, but wiping clean the traces of whatever lived there? Ancient climate records show a period of intense instability around 12,000 years ago. During this time, the world experienced abrupt temperature swings, rising seas, and mysterious extinctions. In North Africa, rainfall patterns shifted violently. Lakes dried in what seemed like an instant. Crops failed. Animals migrated or vanished. Could this be when the Sahara swallowed its cities? If so, what exactly was lost in the dust? Legends from across Africa speak of a great event, a storm of storms, a wind that stripped the sky. The Tuareg remember a sun that vanished for days. Other tribes recall fire falling from above and the ground trembling. Could these be distorted memories of a comet impact, a solar flare, or a volcanic eruption? One fringe theory suggests the detonation of a powerful energy device, perhaps not from our modern age, but from a lost culture that understood the forces of the earth. If a civilization once thrived in the Sahara, might it have had a hand in its own undoing? Or could it have been the victim of a cosmic disaster that erased it from memory and map alike? Across ancient lake beds, researchers have found shards of black glass, melted silica that only forms under extreme heat, similar to nuclear temperatures. Could this be evidence of something more than just nature's fury? If an advanced culture did exist here, one capable of shaping stone with sound and crafting alloys modern tools struggle to cut, might they also have experimented with powers beyond their control? Was their knowledge turned against them, accidentally or by design? And if they saw the end coming, is that why so many structures lie buried, as if purposefully sealed from the sky? Perhaps the disappearance of this civilization wasn't just about survival. Perhaps it was about protection, safeguarding wisdom, hiding tools, sealing off the past from the future until the world was ready to understand. What if the Sahara is not just a graveyard, but a vault? A place where time was swallowed, not by chance, but by choice? As the climate shifted and the rains died, nature itself may have helped finish what the cataclysm began. Sand became silence. Cities turned to shapes. Rivers hardened into memory. And so the Sahara became not just a desert, but a veil, drawn over the greatest mystery the earth has ever known. In the ancient libraries of Egypt and Sumer, crumbling scrolls and chipped tablets speak of a time when the sky itself turned against the earth. These old records, often dismissed as metaphor, describe a cataclysm that began in the west, where the sun sleeps, and the great sands stretch beyond vision. They tell of pillars of flame, fire that rained from the heavens, and a storm so loud it silenced all life. Egyptian scribes referred to it as the night of red winds, when light burst from the horizon and burned the land until it cracked. Sumerian accounts, equally vivid, speak of a fire wheel descending from the sky and turning the ground to glass. Though separated by geography and time, both civilizations agreed. Something terrible came from the direction of the Sahara. For years, these tales were considered poetic exaggeration. But as modern science stepped into the desert, it found strange evidence scattered across the sand, shards of black, glossy material, unlike anything naturally formed. These pieces of desert glass, some as smooth as obsidian, others jagged like shattered mirrors, tell a different story. Their chemical makeup reveals they were formed at temperatures far beyond what natural brush fires or lightning strikes can achieve. Similar glass fields are known in only a few other places, most notably near nuclear test sites. Could something similar have occurred here, long before the age of modern war? One prevailing theory points to a meteor or comet impact. The heat of such a collision would be enough to melt the sand instantly, creating sheets of glass across the surface. But here's where it grows more curious. Some glass fragments are found deep within the sand layers, suggesting they predate known historical eras. Others show microscopic patterns, swirls, gas bubbles, and embedded particles that hint at controlled explosions, not random cosmic strikes. Could these be the scarred remains of an ancient weapon? Or perhaps a powerful energy event unleashed not by nature, but by those who once ruled this land? Theories tie back to the Anunnaki once again. In Mesopotamian myth, these beings were said to wield tools of light and stones that roared. Could such descriptions have been early attempts to explain advanced energy technology? And if so, did a conflict erupt among them or their descendants, leading to an event so devastating that it burned away an entire civilization? Skeptics point to natural explanations. Volcanic eruptions, climate shifts, or meteor showers could all account for glass and legend alike. But supporters of the lost civilization theory ask why the same symbols, spirals of fire, eye-shaped bursts, and tall figures raising rods of power, appear in petroglyphs from North Africa to the Middle East. In caves near the eye of the Sahara, a newly documented carving shows a group of figures fleeing a rising column of flame. Above them, an arc connects sky and earth. Was this art, prophecy, or memory? And if this event truly happened, what was lost in that moment? Cities? Libraries? Knowledge of the stars? If a culture capable of metalwork, sound manipulation, and precise architecture once lived in the Sahara, it might have harnessed energy in ways we can't yet grasp. But such power, if mishandled, could also destroy. Some believe the civilization wasn't destroyed by enemies or disasters, but by its own hand. A final experiment gone wrong, a vault breached, a line crossed. Others believe the firestorm came from above, a cosmic warning, perhaps, or a cleansing force. Either way, the desert glass remains, buried under centuries of sand, glinting under rare sunlight, like the tears of a forgotten world. And with every new shard uncovered, the questions grow. Who unleashed the fire? What were they trying to protect or destroy? And could it happen again? In the heart of the Sahara, where the dunes ripple like frozen waves, a drilling expedition uncovered something that halted machines and silenced the crew. It began as a search for underground aquifers, part of a government-sponsored water project. But what the drill struck wasn't water. It was stone, layered and smooth, set at angles too precise to be natural. A follow-up ground-penetrating radar scan revealed a long, descending shaft. When sand was cleared and access widened, a staircase was revealed, carved into the bedrock and leading down into the earth. Its edges were worn but symmetrical, flanked by walls etched with a strange dark patina, as if touched by ancient heat or some unknown chemical. The steps seemed to spiral gently, descending into silence. A team of geologists and archaeologists, unsure of what they were walking into, followed the stairway down. The air grew colder, denser, as if something ancient was waiting. After a slow descent of what was later measured to be nearly 100 feet, they reached a sealed stone door. The doorway bore no markings at first glance, but under certain lighting, carvings began to appear, grooved images that glowed faintly when traced with fingers, as though some material within the etchings reacted to human heat or touch. Beyond the door was a chamber, unlike anything found in known Saharan archaeology. Its walls were smooth, polished to a degree unseen in desert ruins. The ceiling arched above like the inside of a dome, its surface decorated with constellations that did not match any current night sky. But it was the central carvings that changed everything. Across the chamber's walls stood depictions of humanoid figures. Tall, slender, with elongated skulls and deep-set eyes that seemed to shimmer in the low light. These beings wore robes or armor adorned with symbols no one recognized. Their hands were raised, not in aggression, but in gesture, as if offering something or pointing the way. In one panel, a figure was shown descending from above, arms outstretched, landing upon a hill that resembled the eye of the Sahara. Another showed a group of these figures gathered around a glowing object, possibly a sphere or energy source. In several scenes, humans, shorter, more plainly dressed, stood nearby, watching, kneeling, or reaching upward. What were these images trying to tell? Had these beings come from elsewhere? Or were they ancestors of something long forgotten? The elongated skulls sparked immediate comparisons to similar cranial shapes found in ancient Peruvian and Egyptian remains, though skeptics argue those were cultural modifications. Still, these carvings showed beings with naturally proportioned elongated heads, symmetrical and organic, not bound or shaped. Were they a different species, or perhaps a hybrid race, preserved in memory through stone? And then, there were the eyes. Though carved in stone, they seemed to glow with a subtle radiance. Some of the pigments used reacted strangely to light, suggesting advanced mineral techniques or materials not sourced from the surrounding geology. Could the creators of this chamber have understood luminescence, or used elements we no longer use today? The deeper chambers, still sealed and awaiting safe excavation, appear to lead further underground. Some suggest they may connect to a larger complex, a subterranean city or archive buried beneath the desert. The symbolism at the stairway's entrance, spirals, downward arrows, and the depiction of a key hints that this chamber may be only the beginning. If so, what lies further below? Could the Sahara's sands be hiding not just remnants of a forgotten civilization, but the living vault of its knowledge? And more importantly, were the beings carved on those walls its rulers, its teachers, or its creators? For now, the stairway remains a threshold between what we know and what we've long forgotten. But as teams prepare to go deeper, one truth becomes clear. The desert's silence is beginning to speak. Just days after the discovery of the underground staircase and the chamber etched with images of elongated beings, the atmosphere around the site began to shift, both literally and figuratively. The research team, eager to continue their descent into the lower sealed corridors, brought in advanced instruments to map the underground structure. But as they neared what appeared to be the second tier of the subterranean complex, their tools began to fail. Magnetic sensors gave distorted readings, Geiger counters spiked erratically, and then went silent. Even digital cameras flickered and refused to record. What puzzled the scientists most was that the equipment worked perfectly above ground and in the upper chamber. It was only near a particular segment, an arched passage sealed by thick stone and marked with a glowing triangular sigil, that everything began to falter. When one team attempted to drill near the base of this sealed passage, a sudden pulse of static energy surged through the area, disabling all electronics and leaving several researchers disoriented. The incident was reported, but official explanations cited natural electromagnetic anomalies. Still, whispers spread quickly among the crew. Some described a low hum beneath their feet. Others claimed to feel pressure in the air, like standing before a thunderstorm that never arrived. A few reported dreams, strange and vivid, of tall beings, with eyes of gold, watching them from behind walls of stone. Word of the anomaly reached regional officials. Within days, government personnel arrived at the site, quietly taking control. The staircase was covered. Access points were sealed. The entire project was paused without explanation. What had started as a routine geological survey was now classified. Outside experts were denied entry, and locals were told the operation had ended due to instability. But some couldn't ignore the ancient legends that resurfaced in nearby villages. Stories of desert guardians, silent and buried, who were never meant to awaken. In Tuareg lore, there are tales of protectors left behind by star ancestors, placed deep within the earth to guard sacred knowledge. These beings were said to remain dormant unless disturbed. If awakened, they would unleash a force the surface was not prepared to endure. Were these just myths, or ancient warnings encoded in story form? Some theorists point to the strange energy readings as more than coincidence. They believe the sealed chamber may contain a power source or mechanism, perhaps not a weapon, but a failsafe designed to prevent entry. A few even suggest that the chamber isn't a tomb, but a living system, something designed to observe, to respond. If this is true, could the chamber have detected the excavation as a threat? And was the pulse a warning? A test? Or something else entirely? Whatever the case, the sealing of the site has only fueled curiosity. Satellite images now show subtle changes. Vehicles, temporary structures, and covered tarps. Yet no official statement has been made. The public story is that the area is geologically unstable and unsafe for exploration. But among researchers and alternative historians, a new theory takes shape: that the Sahara holds not just ruins, but systems, intact, buried, and possibly still functioning. Systems left behind by an ancient intelligence that understood the balance between knowledge and danger. Systems now stirring. The guardians, whether metaphor or machine, may have been more than myth. And if they still exist beneath the sand, pulsing faintly with energy and memory, perhaps they were never meant to be found. Not yet. Buried in the rock shelters and cave systems of North Africa are skeletal remains that date back tens of thousands of years. Many were assumed to belong to early nomadic peoples, part of the human migration that moved through the Sahara when it was green and fertile. But as technology advanced, so did the ability to peer into their genetic past. When teams began extracting and analyzing DNA from the bones of these early desert inhabitants, they expected to find familiar patterns, traces of early Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, or even Denisovans. Instead, they found something else. In multiple samples, certain genetic markers simply didn't match anything on record. Segments of the genome were not just unusual, they were untraceable. They did not correspond with any modern or ancient human population. At first, researchers believed it might be contamination or error, but the patterns repeated across samples from sites separated by hundreds of miles. These anomalies were consistent, precise, and shared between remains of individuals who lived during different time periods. What were they seeing? Some tried to dismiss it as genetic drift or a forgotten population. Others, more quietly, began referring to the segments as non-terrestrial sequences, a term not meant for the public eye. The implications were too vast, too controversial. Could this point to a hybrid species? One that was part human, but also part something else? One geneticist, speaking anonymously, noted that the unmatched strands bore signs of advanced splicing, patterns that looked intentional, not random, as if someone had shaped the DNA. Was it evolution taking an unusual turn? Or was there intervention from an external source? The Tuareg and Dogon peoples have long told stories of star beings, tall figures who came from the sky and shared knowledge before retreating into the sands or the stars. Could these legends hold echoes of truth, Could the hybrid ancestry be the result of contact, even blending, between early humans and an ancient intelligence? The shape of the skulls, already noted in Chapter 12, further complicates the picture. Many of the recovered remains show elongated craniums, not shaped by binding or cultural ritual, but formed naturally, genetic. Their brain cavities were larger, their bone density different, their bone sutures unlike typical human structures. Were these the early descendants of something more advanced, or something more ancient? And why has so little of this been released to the public? Behind closed doors, certain institutions continue to study the DNA fragments in silence. Public databases have removed some of the original uploads, and conferences that once promised to reveal major genetic findings quietly changed their topics. It seems as if someone wants to delay the conversation, but the fragments remain. Stored in freezers, archived in sealed labs. The evidence, once seen, cannot be unseen. And for those willing to ask difficult questions, the path leads toward a possibility both awe-inspiring and unsettling. What if human history is not just a story of evolution, but of contact, of convergence? And if so, what became of the other side of that lineage? Did it vanish into legend? Or does it still linger, hidden deep within the sand, and deep within us? Scattered across the sun-bleached cliffs and rock faces of the Sahara are petroglyphs that have puzzled researchers for generations. Etched into stone with astonishing clarity are images that defy explanation. Circles within circles, spiral patterns hovering above figures, and what appear to be wingless discs descending from the heavens. In some carvings, humanoid shapes with elongated heads stand beside these floating forms, arms raised as if in reverence or fear. Others show beams of light or ladder-like trails connecting the sky to the ground. These symbols, found from Algeria's Tassili Niger Plateau to the hidden valleys of Chad, span thousands of miles and eras, yet their similarities are unmistakable. Could so many people, separated by both time and terrain, have imagined the same strange images? Or were they documenting something real, something they witnessed in the skies above? Mainstream archaeologists argue these are symbolic depictions, early attempts to represent celestial bodies, shamanic visions, or mythological stories. They see the spirals as sun worship, the discs as metaphors for the spirit world. But others are not so sure. The precision of the discs, the repeated patterns of light beams, and the consistent portrayal of beings with unnatural proportions suggest something more literal. Some believe the petroglyphs represent actual encounters, moments when ancient peoples saw crafts in the sky, and visitors unlike any they had ever known. In the plateau of Tassili Niger, one of the most famous carvings shows a large central figure, round-headed, faceless, and towering above smaller human shapes. It has come to be known as the Great Martian, though its true name is lost to time. To many, it appears suited, as if wearing armor or protective clothing. Around it, circular glyphs float like satellites. What kind of imagination produced such a vision, carved thousands of years before flight was possible? And why do similar figures appear in petroglyphs in Australia, the American Southwest, and the highlands of Bolivia? Could there have been a global memory, a shared experience carried across cultures? Or were these symbols part of a forgotten language, one meant to record more than story, perhaps a warning or a guide? Some alternative historians have connected these carvings to the Anunnaki once more. In Mesopotamian texts, the sky gods arrived in flaming chariots or vessels that glowed like fire. If such beings traveled across the ancient world, might they have left behind clues, not just in writing, but in images scratched into the rock for those who came after? Could these petroglyphs be part of a record left by those who didn't have parchment or books, but stone and memory? And if they were messages, are we finally beginning to understand them? Skeptics argue the human mind sees patterns where none exist, and that the images are simply exaggerated versions of everyday life. But for every simple interpretation, there remains a glyph too strange, too specific to dismiss. A disk with an aura, a being suspended in midair, a star falling into a temple. In one remote location, a petroglyph shows a figure standing beneath a descending object, with what appears to be energy radiating downward. The detail is too refined to be accidental. And the figure, its head elongated, its arms spread, matches the form found deep in the underground chambers discussed earlier. Could the same beings carved into those walls be the same ones drawn onto these stones? And if so, how long had they been watching, or guiding, humanity? The Sahara's winds have tried to erase these images, but the rock has held them fast. As light passes over the ancient carvings, their stories rise again, faint but unyielding. And perhaps they are waiting for someone, someday, to finally listen. Someone who can see the sky not just as a backdrop to myth, but as a pathway to the truth. As researchers compared the mysterious findings buried beneath the Sahara with ancient accounts from distant lands, a pattern began to take shape, one that pointed not just to forgotten history, but to a shared legacy carried across continents. In the dusty oral traditions of the Tuareg and the Dogon, passed from elder to child through whispered songs and sacred stories, there are tales of tall, glowing beings who descended from the sky and taught the people how to read the stars, shape stone, and live in harmony with the earth. These desert legends speak of radiant-eyed visitors who came during a time when the Sahara was still green, their presence marked by strange symbols and light. They stayed for generations, until a great flood swept across the land and they vanished, promising one day to return. Thousands of miles away, carved into the clay tablets of Sumer and Babylon, a nearly identical tale was recorded, of the Anunnaki, heavenly beings who came down from the sky, bringing knowledge of agriculture, medicine, astronomy, and law. They were said to be tall, with luminous eyes and voices that carried power. They too guided humanity, built great cities, and then disappeared after a massive deluge, retreating into the earth or sky. Could it be coincidence? Or are these fragments of the same story, told through the lens of different civilizations? Many scholars still resist linking such disparate myths, arguing for regional context. But the similarities grow too sharp to ignore. The figures described in Saharan rock art, tall, elongated, glowing, match the descriptions found in cuneiform tablets. The strange tools carved in desert caves resemble what the Sumerians called me, divine objects of power and command. Even the timeline aligns. Sumerian records place the Great Flood around the same era, when climate models suggest a rapid desertification swept across the Sahara. Is it possible that the beings remembered as gods in Mesopotamia did not vanish entirely, but moved westward, seeking refuge or carrying out a broader plan? Some researchers have begun to suggest that the Eye of the Sahara, with its concentric rings and massive scale, could have served as a Western capital or stronghold for the Anunnaki, built during a time of retreat and secrecy. If the same beings arrived in Mesopotamia to build cities like Eridu and Uruk, might they also have left behind monuments hidden beneath the African sands? And what if their final exodus from both regions wasn't an end, but a migration to a place even deeper underground, protected from the chaos on the surface? The Dogon speak of the Nomo, star beings who arrived from the Sirius system, bringing order and knowledge. These figures were also said to leave when their work was done. The crossover between the Namo and Anunnaki myths becomes harder to dismiss as invention. Could both be remnants of a deeper, global memory of star visitors who influenced early civilizations and left behind signs for those who would one day awaken to their presence? Skeptics warn of reading too much into ancient poetry and metaphor. But as excavation continues, and new technology reveals anomalies hidden beneath rock and sand, the voices of the past grow louder. If the Anunnaki truly walked this earth, perhaps they walked farther than once believed, and perhaps the Sahara, silent and vast, is still echoing with their final steps. When a remote expedition returned to the sealed lower chambers beneath the Sahara's shifting sands, what they found defied the borders of known history. Deep within a stone-lined vault, hidden behind a thick panel decorated with star maps and spiral motifs, a single cartouche sat embedded into the wall. Unlike typical Egyptian cartouches, which enclosed royal names in a loop of protection, this one was different. It was longer, curved along the stone like a crescent, and within it were symbols no one could categorize under one culture. It blended the pictographic script of ancient Egypt with the wedge-shaped impressions of Sumerian cuneiform. Some symbols even resembled undeciphered proto-writing found in the Indus Valley. It was as if three civilizations, supposedly separated by geography and time, had collaborated on one message. At the cartouche's center glowed a sunburst symbol, surrounded by concentric rings and dotted with stars. Underneath it, translated with great difficulty by an interdisciplinary team of linguists and epigraphers, were the words, "Here met the Council of Light, when heaven touched the sands." No known record in Egyptian or Sumerian texts had ever mentioned such a council. And the phrase itself, "when heaven touched the sands," immediately raised questions. Was it poetic myth, or a literal event remembered across multiple cultures? And who were the members of this council? Were they human rulers, chosen by divine instruction, or something far older and more mysterious? Further examination of the wall surrounding the cartouche revealed reliefs of tall, robed figures, each bearing different insignias on their chests. One bore the winged disk of Mesopotamian kingship. Another carried the ankh of Egyptian rebirth. A third held a spiral-shaped device unlike anything catalogued in archaeological archives. Beneath their feet, lines flowed outward like rivers of energy, connecting to a symbol shaped like the eye of the Sahara itself. Were these figures representatives of different lands or species, brought together for a purpose now lost to time? And if they ruled together, what had they governed? A region? A people? Or something larger? Something global? The hybrid writing posed even more problems. While some of it mirrored Sumerian logograms and Egyptian phonetics, many glyphs had no match. Attempts to digitize and analyze the unknown characters failed to generate consistent patterns. It was as if the language had been intentionally encoded, readable only to those initiated in its use. This idea of a sacred or restricted language used by an elite group echoes similar practices among ancient priesthoods, where knowledge was passed in secrecy to protect cosmic or divine truths. Was the cartouche meant to seal away something, or to guide those who would one day return? Word of the discovery leaked through obscure channels, prompting swift intervention. The chamber was again sealed under orders labeled "for cultural preservation," though some believe it was to prevent further scrutiny. Images of the cartouche now circulate only in shadowy forums, debated by rogue historians and linguistic outcasts. And among them, the question grows: if these three ancient civilizations once met under one roof, who brought them together? And why have mainstream historians ignored this intersection? The cartouche remains a silent witness to a gathering never recorded in official texts. Yet, its message continues to resonate in the minds of those brave enough to look deeper. If there was truly a moment when heaven touched the sands, then perhaps that moment left more than ruins. It left a warning, a legacy, and a forgotten alliance, waiting to be remembered. Beneath the vast stillness of the Sahara, where the heat seems to silence everything, researchers have begun to detect a sound, steady, rhythmic, and unlike anything previously recorded in desert geology. Using deep seismic microphones and audio mapping tools originally designed to detect tectonic shifts, a team studying subterranean layers near the eye of the Sahara picked up low-frequency vibrations. At first, they were believed to be echoes of distant earthquakes or natural geothermal movement. But as the data came into focus, the pulses revealed a repeating pattern. Every 11 minutes, a dense burst of low sound emerged, followed by a shorter pause, then 3 quicker pulses. This cycle repeated again and again, uninterrupted by time or temperature, even when monitored from multiple locations. These weren't random seismic events. They had order, rhythm, almost intention. When the audio was translated into waveforms, the visual structure resembled that of artificial frequencies produced by machinery. Still, the official explanation given to the public leaned toward natural geothermal resonance, perhaps caused by shifts in subterranean water flow or mineral pressure. Yet deep inside restricted reports, internal teams began comparing the readings to known man-made energy emissions. The patterns did not match anything natural. What could be producing such consistent sound so deep underground? Some suggested an unknown magnetic anomaly, interacting with buried mineral deposits. Others went further, theorizing that the pulses were not just signals, but echoes from an ancient system, perhaps a power source left running, buried and protected beneath the sands. The frequency of the pulses also drew attention from those studying ancient architecture and energy systems. The intervals matched the ratios found in harmonic resonance, used in ancient temples and stone circles around the world to amplify sound and energy. Could the Sahara's rhythm be tied to a lost technology based on resonance, used by a civilization now buried beneath time and sand? A few even dared to propose that what lay below was not just a generator, but a consciousness, something sentient, or at least responsive, waiting for the right frequency or signal to awaken. This idea seemed far-fetched to many, but the evidence kept mounting. Geological scans of the surrounding area showed unusual patterns in the rock layers, resembling heat sinks or containment walls. Massive slabs of conductive material appeared to encase a central zone. Whatever lay at the heart of it remained untouched by drills and sensors, as if protected by an invisible barrier. Could it be a buried reactor? A beacon? Or something designed to maintain a balance between worlds, or between forces we no longer understand? The sound itself, now recorded across multiple points, has been digitally recreated and studied by acoustic engineers. When played aloud, listeners describe a deep hum that seems to vibrate within the chest, stirring emotions difficult to name. Some feel calm, others feel watched, and a few report dreams afterward, of stone corridors pulsing with light, and voices whispering in languages they've never heard. Could the Sahara be humming with memory, with purpose, with a warning? Or is it calling out, waiting to be answered by those who still carry the frequency in their blood? These voices from the core, too deep for the ear but too ordered to be chance, remind us that beneath the silence of the desert, something may still be moving. Not just wind, not just heat, but design. As new imaging tools scanned beneath the Sahara's crust, what began as fragmented anomalies soon revealed something far more astonishing. A massive underground system of tunnels and conduits stretching across thousands of kilometers, from Mauritania to Libya, and even reaching faintly beneath the coastal edges of Egypt. The structures did not follow natural fault lines or random geology. Instead, they curved in precise angles, mirrored in symmetry, and intersected at consistent intervals. The corridors were not built for movement, at least not human movement. They lacked stairs, ramps, or paths for walking. Instead, they followed energetic ley lines, magnetic boundaries of the Earth long referenced in ancient lore. Scientists who studied the layout said it resembled a neural web, like the branching pathways of the human brain or the root system of an ancient tree. Some began to call it the brain of the ancient world. At major nodal points in the network, electromagnetic pulses matched those discussed in Chapter 18. Low, steady, and timed. These pulses seemed to originate from chambers at the junctions, almost as if signals were being transmitted, received, or stored. The deeper question became clear. Was this network a forgotten power grid, or something even more advanced? An interface designed to carry thought, data, or resonance? Some theorists argued it could be part of a consciousness circuit, designed to link regions, sites, or beings in a synchronized system. A communication structure that spanned continents, sleeping for thousands of years, waiting for reactivation. Carvings found near certain entrance points supported this idea. Petroglyphs showed interconnected rings with beams flowing between them, much like energy moving across a circuit board. One glyph even showed a human figure seated beneath a dome, with light beams extending from the head into branching lines, eerily similar to modern illustrations of brain scans and thought maps. Could the builders of this network have understood frequencies and consciousness in ways lost to modern science? Were these tunnels meant to store information, not in books or tablets, but in vibration and space? And more disturbingly, if this was indeed a system for resonance or memory, could it still be recording, still transmitting? The materials used in the corridor walls also deepened the mystery. Sections were lined with a mineral compound that displayed unusually high conductivity and temperature regulation. When samples were tested, they showed properties not native to the Sahara, possibly transported from distant regions or synthesized using knowledge unknown to today's technology. Could these have acted as energy channels, maintaining stable vibrations across the network? Or were they insulation for something more dangerous, something protected from surfacing? Efforts to explore the system further were halted abruptly after initial scans. Teams who ventured beyond mapped zones often reported confusion, loss of time, and disorientation. One team described hearing a faint chorus of tones, like wind passing through crystal, that caused physical pressure in the chest and made compass needles spin. While some dismissed this as sensory illusion, others quietly noted that similar effects had been reported in sacred sites around the world, from the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid to deep caves in the Andes. It seemed these places were not just built on energetic nodes but were perhaps connected to this same network. Could the Sahara's tunnel grid have once linked with others beneath the Earth's surface? And if so, what was the purpose of such a system? Was it a map, a machine, or a sleeping organism of stone and energy, half natural, half constructed, waiting for the right alignment or signal to awaken? Whatever it is, the sleeping network continues to hum quietly beneath the sand, like a dormant nerve waiting to be touched. And when that connection is finally made, will we be the ones controlling the signal, or merely answering it? Deep beneath a remote section of the Sahara's southern dunes, an anomaly once dismissed as a collapsed cave was revisited after satellite magnetometry detected a consistent geometric pattern in the sand's magnetic field. Dig teams returned with precision drills and resonance scanners, slowly revealing the top edge of what appeared to be a dome-shaped structure unlike any natural formation. When the sand was cleared, what lay beneath sent shockwaves through the private research world. A sealed metallic vault, smooth and seamless, embedded in bedrock, as if grown there rather than built. Its curved exterior bore inscriptions that stopped even the most skeptical archaeologists in their tracks. Clear, symmetrical glyphs, identical to the cuneiform symbols attributed to the Anunnaki. But these were not carved. They were raised, etched in layered relief, with such precision that each symbol caught the light in a subtle, deliberate way. The symbols pulsed faintly when touched, as if reacting to human skin. For days, the structure resisted entry. Conventional tools failed to make a mark, and sonic probes were scrambled near the surface. Then, during a desert storm, the vault emitted a low harmonic vibration and partially opened along an unseen seam, revealing a spiraling ramp that led downward into complete darkness. Inside, the air was cool, pressurized, and clean, entirely unlike the dry atmosphere above. At the base of the chamber, explorers discovered a series of crystalline tablets, each held within a metallic frame. They glowed faintly with a light source from within the crystal itself. The tablets bore the same Anunnaki glyphs, though some characters had never been seen before. These tablets were not fragile. When scanned, they displayed levels of structural density higher than diamond, yet their surfaces felt warm and responsive to the touch. Scientists speculated that the tablets could hold information, possibly in forms we don't yet understand. Were they storage devices? Or something more interactive? Tools that responded to energy or thought? One tablet, when approached, triggered a sudden wave of sound. Subtle, but patterned. Researchers who remained in the chamber during this event reported visions, fragmented images of star patterns, cities made of light, and a figure standing in front of a sun-like sphere. Was this a hallucination caused by environmental factors? Or did the tablets actually transmit memory or encoded experience? Could these be the true books of the gods? Not stories carved in stone, but living records encoded in vibration, light, and crystalline structure. Theories spread fast. Some believed the vault was a kind of time capsule, left behind by the Anunnaki during their final exodus. Others claimed it was a power node, a central server in a vast planetary system of knowledge storage. And a few dared to suggest the most extraordinary possibility, that the vault was not abandoned, but waiting. If so, what signal would it need to activate fully? Could the glow of the tablets be more than ambient energy? Could it be awareness? The walls of the chamber contained more clues, mural-like panels, showing beings with elongated skulls, interacting with pyramidal structures, and disc-shaped vessels hovering above mountains and oceans. One panel showed a flood sweeping over a city. With the glowing tablets being carried into the vault by tall, robed figures. Another panel displayed a spiral descending into the earth, ending in a seed-shaped object, pulsing with lines of energy, uncannily similar to the vault's shape itself. Was this vault meant to be found only in a time of great need? And if so, who were the true recipients of its message? Modern humans, or someone else entirely? Access to the site was quickly restricted. Only a few blurry images leaked into the public realm, sparking fierce debate. But among the few who saw the vault firsthand, there was little doubt. This was not the relic of a primitive past. It was the product of something higher. Something that once walked among us, taught us, and vanished. If the Anunnaki really did exist, then perhaps their history was never lost. It was simply waiting to be read. Within hours of the Anunnaki vault's partial opening, a ripple spread beyond the desert, unseen by the naked eye, yet tracked by machines orbiting high above the Earth. Satellite arrays, originally tasked with monitoring solar radiation and seismic activity, registered a burst of low-frequency electromagnetic energy centered over the Sahara. The pulse was narrow yet global in effect, reaching deep into magnetic fault zones and echoing outward in synchronized waves. Unlike natural geomagnetic storms, which follow solar flares or auroral spikes. This signal carried a uniform code, measured in repeating intervals, as if transmitting a structured sequence. It wasn't just noise, it was data. Though brief, the signal activated dormant anomalies across the planet. Magnetic compasses near ancient megalithic sites began to spin erratically. Seismographs in otherwise stable regions trembled without tectonic cause. Even beneath the Pacific, deep-sea sensors reported unexplained pressure shifts, as if something beneath the seabed stirred. At the poles, auroral patterns changed shape, forming rings and spirals seen only in ancient symbols. Could it be that the vault was more than a sealed archive? Could it have acted as a trigger, one piece of a much larger mechanism spanning the globe? Governments responded in silence. The Sahara region was declared a no-fly zone. Satellite access was restricted. Public data feeds were scrubbed of anomalies. And the official narrative cited a minor dust storm disrupting communications. Yet beneath the surface, global agencies convened in emergency sessions. Documents later leaked to obscure networks revealed phrases like non-local synchronization event, cross-grid activation, and anticipated timeline breach. Intelligence analysts, confronted with centuries-old myths suddenly aligning with live data, quietly turned to historians and linguists for answers once buried in myth. Could the vault's activation have been part of an ancient countdown, a beacon finally triggered after millennia of slumber? And if so, what had it awakened? Whispers emerged from black budget departments that similar structures, long dormant and ignored, had begun to stir across other deserts, within mountain ranges, and deep beneath polar ice. A pattern was emerging, linking sites once dismissed as ceremonial or symbolic into a vast hidden grid. The pulse from the Sahara seemed to have touched every node. What were once ruins were now responding, humming faintly with the same frequency. Across classified channels, some officials feared the worst. That something had been buried, not for protection, but containment. Others saw opportunity. If these sites were part of a lost power system, or even an ancient network of consciousness, then perhaps humanity was on the edge of rediscovery. But for those on the ground near the Sahara vault, the change was immediate. The crystalline tablets now pulsed brighter, their glow no longer steady, but timed, matching the external signals measured by satellite. Walls that once echoed silence began to vibrate faintly, as if tuning into a new signal or broadcasting one of their own. Could the entire system be waking up? And if so, who or what was listening on the other end? Religious institutions issued vague statements about respecting ancient mysteries. Tech firms increased their surveillance budgets. Military contractors moved into neighboring regions under the guise of joint training. But among independent researchers and desert locals, one belief grew stronger: that the vault's signal had not just opened a channel, but flipped a forgotten switch in Earth's long-hidden machinery. And now, nothing would remain silent for long. In the wake of the vault's activation and the strange global signal that followed, satellite operators began noticing subtle changes in the Sahara's vast surface. At first, the anomalies appeared as minor shadows or ripples, dismissed as tricks of light or natural dune movement. But then, over the span of just a few nights, entire dune fields began to shift in ways that defied wind patterns. The formations began forming sweeping arcs, geometric spirals, and large circular outlines that mirrored the glyphs found on the Anunnaki vault itself. Engineers reviewed time-lapse satellite footage and confirmed what was once considered impossible. The sands were not only moving, they were organizing. Each morning revealed new patterns, precise and rhythmic, appearing in isolated areas across hundreds of kilometers. The most startling formation measured nearly 2 kilometers in diameter, a series of concentric rings near the Algerian border that resembled the Eye of Horus. a symbol long associated with protection and divine perception. But no storms had passed through. No seismic events could account for it, and the wind charts showed nothing that could move sand with such coordination. To the human eye, it seemed the desert was watching. At night, local nomadic tribes reported unusual lights flickering just above the dunes. Soft, bluish orbs that danced low to the ground before vanishing into the distance. Others spoke of a low hum that vibrated the earth beneath their tents, growing stronger near old rock outcroppings or ancient well sites. These were not new myths. The Tuareg and Berber elders had passed down stories for centuries of the Sahara breathing in silence, shifting not from the wind, but from an ancient force that once lay beneath. A living desert, they said, waiting for a call to stir. Now that call may have been answered. Environmental sensors left by researchers began to pick up faint electromagnetic pulses, rising from the surface, especially at dawn and dusk. The signals pulsed at intervals nearly identical to those detected from the Anunnaki vault. A further sign that the events were connected. Could the shifting dunes be part of a feedback mechanism? Was the desert responding to the signal like a vast antenna array made not of metal, but of sand and silence? Some theorists proposed that the Sahara had been engineered long ago, not as a desert, but as a camouflage, a massive living surface meant to mask or contain the intelligence buried below. And now that containment was breaking, patterns in the sand grew more complex each day. In some places, newly exposed ground revealed ancient stone tiles, previously buried under centuries of shifting earth. In others, electromagnetic scanners picked up heat blooms just below the surface, as if dormant machinery had begun to stir. Among the most bizarre reports came from a nomad caravan that claimed to witness part of the desert floor sink in on itself, revealing a wide spiral depression that glowed faintly before returning to its original state by morning. When aerial drones were dispatched, the depression was gone. No trace remained, save for a faint circular impression and scorched plant roots around the perimeter. Could the desert itself now be alive with memory, operating like a giant organic machine, responding to signals older than recorded history? Or is this the awakening of something that was never fully asleep? Governments and media outlets stayed quiet, attributing local disturbances to heat mirages, solar flares, or tribal folklore. Yet encrypted briefings among military intelligence noted the desert's behavior as non-random, synchronized, and location-specific. Maps of the emerging patterns were labeled dynamic nodes, and certain regions were blacked out from commercial satellite access. To the world at large, the Sahara remained as it always appeared, vast, empty, and unknowable. But to those watching closely, it had begun to blink, not in light, but in movement, in geometry, in frequency, and perhaps in awareness. The question now is, if the desert is reacting, what exactly is it responding to? And what happens when its attention turns to us? As the Sahara's dunes shifted and strange energy patterns rippled across the region, something even more startling began to emerge, not beneath the sands, but from distant corners of the continent. In remote stretches of Ethiopia, Mali, and the Congo Basin, independent dig teams and local villagers began uncovering objects that defied explanation. Buried beneath layers of untouched soil, strange metallic tools surfaced, not rusted or decayed, but gleaming with preserved luster, as though they had only recently been buried. Their design was unfamiliar to African Iron Age civilizations, yet curiously identical to artifacts unearthed decades ago in Sumerian excavation sites. The tools displayed impossibly precise carvings, small embedded crystals, and notches that seemed to serve no known mechanical function. Some emitted faint vibrations when held, while others produced weak magnetic pulses. Word of these findings spread quickly through academic channels. But almost just as quickly, many were silenced or discredited. Museums refused to authenticate the tools. Yet in private circles, historians and theorists saw a disturbing pattern forming, one that connected the cradle of Mesopotamian civilization to the heart of the African interior. Were these artifacts evidence of migration? Or were they clues left behind by something even older than Sumeria? A theory began to grow in hushed conversations that after the Great Cataclysm theorized to have ended the Green Sahara, survivors of the advanced civilization we now connect with the Anunnaki fled underground. There, shielded from the changing skies and storms of fire described in ancient texts, they preserved not only their lives, but their knowledge, technologies, and perhaps even their purpose. Could these recent discoveries mark the beginning of their resurfacing? In tribal regions with long oral traditions, shamans and elders began recalling legends once considered too mystical to be taken seriously. Stories of star people who arrived in fire but lived in peace, who taught the ancestors how to read the sky, grow food, and heal with energy. When their time ended, these beings did not leave in ships. They simply walked into the mountains or deserts and disappeared. In the Congo, villagers told of metal giants who came once every 1,000 seasons, testing the earth with rods of light. In the Dogon territory of Mali, elders pointed to newly unearthed tools and whispered, "They are waking." The phrase carried no fear, only certainty. Satellite data soon confirmed that more objects were surfacing in areas aligned with ancient fault lines and water systems, precisely where the underground network identified in earlier chapters might run. If these tools had indeed traveled through subterranean corridors, then perhaps the entire continent had been seeded long ago with markers, keys meant to be retrieved when the time was right. One of the most stunning discoveries occurred in a deep cavern system near Lake Turkana. Inside, researchers found a perfectly preserved chamber with walls of dark stone cut at 90-degree angles. In the center lay a pedestal, and on it, a tool shaped like a tuning fork, engraved with a symbol identical to those found in the Anunnaki vault. When touched, the fork vibrated and triggered a low harmonic tone that echoed through the chamber for hours. Was it a beacon, a signal, or simply a reminder that the builders had never truly left? Some scientists dismissed the connections as wishful pattern-making, but others asked harder questions. How could such advanced tools end up in regions with no history of metallurgy that matched their complexity? And why were they all surfacing now, just as the Sahara began to hum again? If the builders had gone underground, waiting for the earth to stabilize, could this be their chosen moment to return? And if so, would they come as guides, as guardians, or as something else entirely? As each artifact is pulled from the earth, it seems less like a random discovery and more like a message. The past is no longer buried. It is rising, piece by piece, tool by tool, memory by memory, awakening in the hands of a world that may barely be ready to understand it. As theories surrounding the return of ancient builders began to gain traction, attention quietly turned toward something even more sensitive: bloodlines. Genealogical records, long preserved in royal houses, tribal scrolls, and obscure archives, began to surface with puzzling consistencies. In regions of North Africa, particularly in Morocco, Mauritania, and parts of southern Algeria, certain noble families traced their lineage not to kings or conquerors, but to beings they referred to as those from the stars. These weren't metaphors or poetic flourishes. The records described tall, luminous-eyed figures who taught early humans agriculture, sacred geometry, and star navigation. They didn't come from distant lands, but from above, And when their time ended, they did not die, but returned to the sands beneath. The rituals of these families held symbols nearly identical to those associated with Sumerian deities: spiral motifs, winged discs, and serpents coiled around rods. One prominent Berber clan, whose oral history spans back thousands of years, used a ceremonial staff nearly identical in design to the rod of Enki, the Anunnaki deity, known for wisdom and water. Their burial rites included aligning graves with Orion's belt and painting a seven-pointed star on tomb walls, both symbols appearing across Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and even South American sites. Could this convergence be coincidence? Or do these royal houses carry more than tradition, perhaps even a dormant code from a time when the sky ruled the earth? Linguists noted that certain ancient words passed down in North African dialects bore no root in Arabic or Berber language families, but sounded eerily similar to Sumerian root forms. One such word, kalamu, used in Saharan songs to describe divine speech, matched a Sumerian term meaning sacred voice. How could a word cross thousands of kilometers and remain unchanged for thousands of years, unless it was once spoken by those who walked among both peoples? Researchers discovered haplogroups rare in African populations but showing traces also found in isolated ancient remains from Mesopotamia. The connection was thin but undeniable. It suggested movement, or perhaps shared ancestry, between the people of the Green Sahara and those who lived along the Tigris and Euphrates. Could there have been interbreeding between the Anunnaki and early humans, as some ancient texts controversially suggest? And could the blood of these unions still flow, hidden in royal veins and nomadic tribes? A study of ancient crests, used by dynasties in Nubia and Upper Egypt, revealed similar iconography. Eagle wings, flanking a central disk, a motif found not just in Assyria and Babylon, but engraved above the entrance to the Sahara vault itself. Some researchers believe these families were not just rulers, but guardians, tasked with protecting knowledge until the time was right. That time may be now. One forgotten scroll, kept hidden in the private library of a Mauritanian elder, describes a prophecy handed down through generations. It speaks of the children of the sky who will awaken when the earth shakes and the stars realign. The text ends with a warning. They will not be unknown. They carry the light in their eyes and the old symbols in their bones. If true, such a lineage would not only tie modern bloodlines to the builders of the vault, but suggest that the awakening of the Sahara is not just a geological event, but a genetic one. And if the bearers of this ancient code still walk among us, would they even know who they are? Or has their purpose remained hidden, waiting for the signs in the sand to call them home? As more discoveries from the Sahara emerged, the lens of history began to shift. Scholars who once separated Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the fabled Atlantis into distinct, unrelated realms started seeing patterns that transcended time and distance. It began with architecture. The platform foundations uncovered beneath the Sahara bore uncanny similarities to those found in the oldest levels of Eridu and Ur in Sumeria. Massive stone bases aligned to celestial markers, with drainage systems and corridor layouts too advanced for their alleged era. Then came the language. Fragments of glyphs from deep vault chambers matched root characters found in pre-dynastic Egypt and early Canaanite inscriptions. This wasn't a borrowing of culture, but something deeper, something that hinted at a common origin point. And that point, increasingly, was looking to be the Green Sahara, a vast, now buried empire that may have served as the mother of civilizations. Could this ancient culture have seeded the knowledge that sparked the birth of later empires? Could it be the lost link between the Anunnaki's influence in Sumer, the pyramid builders of Egypt, and the mysterious ruins beneath the Atlantic that Plato called Atlantis? A growing group of historians began to believe that the Sahara civilization did not vanish. It evolved, splintering as its climate changed and cataclysms broke its infrastructure. Survivors may have migrated east into the Nile Valley, forming the foundations of dynastic Egypt. Others may have fled to the Levant or across the Mediterranean, and a few may have traveled west into the ocean, where legends of a high civilization swallowed by the sea were born. What if the Sahara was the root from which these branches grew? One expedition uncovered a large stone relief in a buried temple near Tamanrasset, showing a detailed map of the known world. Except the continents appeared subtly different. Africa's interior was lush, with winding rivers and central lakes. Egypt was a small corner province, and Sumer was labeled not as the beginning, but as a colony. The Western Ocean, now the Atlantic, showed island clusters in geometric formation. What some believe were the remains of the Atlantean outposts. Could it be that what we call history is merely the scattered aftermath of one vast parent culture lost to time and sand? Ritual practices also bore striking resemblances. In ancient Libyan tombs, newly examined artifacts showed both Egyptian-style ankhs and Mesopotamian tree-of-life symbols used side by side, suggesting these symbols did not originate separately, but were both inherited from a shared predecessor. Even the famed Atlantean trident motif was found subtly carved into a wall near the Sahara Vault's secondary chamber. The overlap grew impossible to ignore. Linguists cross-referenced myths from Mali, Babylon, and old Egyptian texts, and found recurring themes: a sky-born race teaching law and architecture, a flood that scattered nations, and an underground place where the knowledge was preserved. The deeper one looked, the more it seemed that these weren't independent cultural creations, but fractured memories of the same lost empire. If the Sahara was once the central hub, then its destruction reshaped the entire human timeline. Rather than being separate miracles of advancement, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and perhaps even Atlantis might simply be echoes of one civilization, split by disaster, remembered through myth, and now slowly reawakening. This theory sent shockwaves through the academic world. Institutions that had always championed regional isolation began quietly funding comparative studies. Old taboos were lifted. Conferences once banned were now booked. And yet, despite the mounting evidence, the narrative remained unofficial. What would it mean for modern society if we accepted that our civilizations didn't rise independently, but were built on the ashes of something greater? Could the knowledge buried beneath the Sahara change how we see not just our past, but our potential? The more we uncover, the more it seems the sands of the Sahara did not just cover bones and ruins, but buried the blueprint of civilization itself. As mainstream media remained silent, and official institutions deflected rising interest, a new wave of information surged from an unexpected source: insiders. A series of anonymous leaks began to appear on encrypted forums and within classified data dumps. The files, marked with logos of global archaeological missions and space observation agencies, hinted at something extraordinary and tightly controlled. These whistleblowers, some engineers, others translators or logistics contractors, claimed that multiple excavation sites across the Sahara were active, well-funded, and completely hidden from the public. Satellite blackout zones, equipment disguised as weather stations, and temporary airspace restrictions pointed to ongoing operations. What were they trying to hide? According to leaked reports and photos, deep beneath the sand, dig teams had uncovered crystalline energy cells the size of large books. The devices glowed softly in low light, their cores pulsing at rhythmic intervals. Engineers reportedly failed to determine their power source, but spectral analysis revealed trace elements not found on Earth. Alongside them were metallic tablets, etched with symbols that matched the vault inscriptions. Linguists brought in to decode the markings confirmed they aligned with the ancient Anunnaki script, a language once considered mythological. Even more stunning were the stellar maps, found etched onto concave metallic plates. The maps detailed not only Earth's solar system, but surrounding star systems in perfect alignment, including several exoplanets, only recently discovered by modern astronomy. One map showed a trajectory starting from a distant constellation and ending in the Sahara, marked with circular glyphs and strange branching lines. Could these have been the coordinates of their origin, or were they records of return? The implications were staggering. One whistleblower detailed a chamber lined with hexagonal wall panels, each housing what looked like preserved storage units. Inside them were small artifacts, mechanical orbs, flattened rods, and disks that emitted low electromagnetic fields. Attempts to remove or test them were met with immediate system failures, leading to containment protocols enforced by military security. The leaked briefings warned that several nations had already formed secret agreements regarding the artifact's study, agreeing to suppress any leaks and manipulate public archaeology data to prevent speculation. But the artifacts told a different story. A hidden civilization had not only existed beneath the Sahara, it had once wielded technology far beyond what history allowed. And now, piece by piece, that buried truth was forcing its way back into the light. Could these be remnants of the Anunnaki themselves? Had their technology endured under the sands for tens of thousands of years, waiting to be unearthed by a species ready or foolish enough to seek them out? One leaked image revealed what appeared to be an interface, a stone-like console fused with crystal and metal, its center flickering with faint pulses of light when approached. Attempts to interact triggered electromagnetic surges that disabled equipment within several meters. Observers described the sensation of a low hum resonating within their chest, as if the structure recognized biological presence. The implications were profound. Was the technology not only active, but conscious, able to respond, to scan, perhaps even to communicate? Why were these discoveries hidden from the public, when they could reshape everything we know about our origins? And more urgently, what might still be active down there, waiting not to be discovered, but to be awakened? These were no longer questions for archaeologists alone. They were questions that reached into physics, philosophy, and the survival of civilization itself. The buried truth had begun to surface, and the world, whether it knew it or not, was standing at the edge of a history long erased, but never fully forgotten. In the stillness of the Sahara's deepest reaches, beneath sand that once bore forests and rivers, a quiet pulse continues to echo, timed, steady, and ancient. It does not cry for help, nor declare war. It waits. And as each excavation, each unearthed glyph, each humming artifact is brought to light, the question grows louder. What if the Sahara is not merely a graveyard of stone and silence, but the lid to something still alive? Across temples, vaults, tunnels, and crystalline chambers, a pattern emerges, not just of power or technology, but of presence. From the tales of the Tuareg, to the forbidden inscriptions, to the rhythmic signals resonating from the core, it becomes clear that this civilization did not vanish. It withdrew. It retreated into the earth, not as a race defeated, but as one that understood time differently, patient, enduring, and cyclical. The Anunnaki, once believed to have ascended to the heavens or faded into legend, now seem closer than ever. Could it be that they did not leave at all, that their great exodus was a descent, not an escape? And if so, what were they waiting for? Some theorists believe the signals we now detect are not warnings or relics, but invitations, coded calls triggered by a threshold reached. Perhaps humanity has finally built enough, connected enough, awakened enough to be recognized again by the ones who first shaped our path. Perhaps the forgotten gods of the old world are not in distant stars, but just beneath our feet, observing, measuring, waiting. And what would it mean if we found them? Would they reveal truths too vast for us to bear? Or would they judge our readiness based not on our tools, but our spirit? Ancient texts speak of a time when the children of clay would rise and reclaim the flame. Could this be that time? Could we be standing on the brink of a reunion long prophesied, one that would not just rewrite history, but reforge the bond between earth and the stars? Those who once ruled not with swords, but with light and voice, may not be forgotten after all. Their return might not come with ships or fire, but through our willingness to see beyond what we've been told. As the winds of the Sahara continue to whisper through dunes, as the stars shift overhead in patterns once carved into stone, the final question lingers. Are we the explorers or the rediscovered? Are we knocking on ancient doors or answering an ancient call? The desert does not speak, but it listens. And somewhere deep within, something listens back. In recent months, anonymous footage has emerged, showing energy discharges from areas previously identified as dormant. Instruments left behind by private explorers detect slight but consistent magnetic pulses, aligning to known cosmic events. Certain points across the Sahara now appear to respond to celestial alignments, glowing faintly during equinoxes, echoing frequencies that match background cosmic radiation. It seems the ancient systems are not just remembering. They are syncing, aligning, as if preparing. But preparing for what? Have we crossed a threshold unknowingly, unlocking a sequence meant to unfold only once we were ready? And if these systems are indeed awakening, what role will we play in what comes next? Will we be welcomed as heirs or judged as failures? The myths never promised salvation. They warned of return. They spoke of beings who would one day rise from the earth when the time was right, not to rule again, but to restore balance to a world teetering on the edge of forgetting its origin. What if our technological progress is the very key that reactivates what lies below? Not in conquest, but in resonance. Not in domination, but in remembrance. Across ancient texts in forgotten tongues, there is one symbol that recurs, a spiral bound in a triangle, surrounded by stars. It has been found in Sumerian ruins, in Saharan vaults, in temples now lost to the jungle. The meaning is unclear, but scholars speculate it represents the convergence of space, matter, and memory. And now, that convergence seems to be happening, a reckoning between the present and the past, a moment when history's deepest secret may no longer remain buried. If the Anunnaki were the custodians of early Earth, if they sculpted civilization's foundation and then slipped into myth, then perhaps what we now uncover is not a warning, but an inheritance. The greatest legacy may not be technology or temples, but a test, one we are only now beginning to understand. Will we pass it? Or will we, like those who came before, vanish beneath time and silence once more? The desert holds its breath, and the gods, forgotten for ages, may be ready to return, not from the sky, but from beneath our very feet. For decades, the strange inscriptions found deep beneath the Sahara baffled researchers. Written in a style that mirrored no known human language, these carvings blended curves, straight lines, and layered symbols that shimmered faintly when exposed to certain frequencies of light. At first, they were dismissed as decoration, but recent breakthroughs in computational linguistics and pattern recognition changed everything. Experts comparing the symbols to Sumerian cuneiform and early Proto-Egyptian signs uncovered a startling consistency, suggesting these were not just artistic etchings, but a written system, one with complex grammar, numeric precision, and multidimensional meanings. Scholars dubbed it the language of the architects, as its structure resembled the very principles of design and balance. This was not a language for speaking, but one for building. Line after line described ratios of force, angles of construction, and something called harmonic thresholds. Diagrams next to the symbols showed geometric shapes pulsing with energy, as if sound and vibration were used as tools. The deeper researchers dug, the clearer the message became. These beings used resonance, not brute strength, to move and shape matter. Could this be how massive stones were lifted, cut, and fused with such impossible accuracy in ancient sites across the world? Could this lost language explain how structures like the Great Pyramid or the Sacsayhuaman walls were made without modern machines? One section of the vault wall detailed what appeared to be a global energy grid, with nodes matching ancient sites from Egypt to South America. These sites, according to the symbols, were not just ceremonial. They were active parts of a planetary network meant to balance natural forces. But something disrupted the pattern. In the lower right corner of the panel, a spiral symbol was broken by a jagged line, followed by glyphs translating roughly to breach, disharmony, and severance. Was this the moment the system failed? Did the collapse of this energy web cause the Sahara to dry out and bury its civilization in sand? Some believe so. Others wonder if the failure was triggered deliberately, perhaps by internal conflict or a misuse of power. As more symbols were decoded, researchers began to notice recurring instructions, as if the original writers had anticipated future rediscovery. Phrases like "restore the measure" and "when the sky returns" hinted at a cycle, a countdown, or perhaps a test. Were the Anunnaki not only engineers but also caretakers of Earth's balance? And if their system broke once before, could it be happening again in our time? The deeper meanings of the language point not only to physical laws, but to a form of memory encoded into the planet itself. Several researchers, previously silent, now claim the symbols respond to tone. Specific vibrations cause certain carvings to glow or emit low hums, as if they are part of an interactive system. Could it be that the vaults were designed to be read only by those who reached a certain understanding of sound and math? If so, then the knowledge buried under the Sahara wasn't just hidden, it was locked, waiting for the right frequency, the right mind, or the right moment to open it. As translations continued, one phrase repeated across several panels: "Those who forget the song of the earth will fall into silence." Is it a warning, a prophecy, or a reminder that the power once held by the Anunnaki was not only technical, but spiritual, rooted in a deep harmony between civilization and the natural world? The language of the architects is no longer a mystery. It is a doorway. But the question remains, are we wise enough to walk through it? When the second vault door finally gave way after months of precision work, what lay beyond was unlike anything seen before. The chamber was round, its walls smooth and silver gray, faintly pulsing with light from veins of crystal embedded in the stone. At the center stood a raised platform holding several large discs, each the size of a shield, carved from a dark, stone-like material that seemed too smooth, too perfect, to be natural. The discs were arranged in a spiral, leading from the outer rim of the chamber to the center, where a pedestal held a final, smaller disc, set apart from the rest. Each disc bore intricate carvings, symbols, star patterns, and sequences of what appeared to be dates and cycles. Astronomers brought in to study the markings were stunned to find that many of the constellations matched the current sky, though depicted in a form thousands of years old. These were not just decorative engravings. They were celestial records. The discs charted alignments, eclipses, and planetary conjunctions stretching across millennia. But one disc in particular drew immediate attention. Its markings matched an astronomical event projected to occur in the early part of this century. A rare alignment involving the center of the Milky Way, multiple planetary orbits, and Earth's axial tilt. Was this simply a calendar, or was it a countdown? Near the edge of that disk, beneath the star maps, were symbols that translated to phrases like, "When the stars return to their cradle, and the time of merging draws near." Experts called it the Vault of Prophecies. If the translations were accurate, this chamber was not only a repository of astronomical knowledge, but a timeline left behind by the ancient builders, a record of past cycles, and a warning of what was to come. One symbol, found both on the wall and the final disk at the center of the spiral, showed a downward triangle filled with 3 circles, one marked as Earth, one as a star system far away, and the third marked with the same spiral glyph seen in earlier vaults. Some believed this triangle represented a convergence of worlds, civilizations, once separated by time and space, returning to alignment. Could this convergence be more than symbolic? Could the Anunnaki, or their descendants, have timed their return to coincide with this event? The theory seemed wild, yet the precision of the carvings, the knowledge encoded in the discs, and the secrecy surrounding the vault's discovery added weight to the idea. What if this chamber was not just a record but a message? A signal meant to be found when the world was ready? And if so, who, or what, was it meant for? Some archaeologists quietly suggested that this vault might have been designed for them, not us. That we were never the intended audience. But now, after awakening something buried for eons, we had become part of the story. The convergence mentioned in the symbols did not only point to astronomy, it referenced unions of bloodlines, the rejoining of ancient paths, and the rekindling of powers that had once guided humanity in the age before the sands. Were there families today unknowingly carrying fragments of this ancient legacy? Were the scattered clues of royal bloodlines, cosmic knowledge, and forgotten rituals finally leading back to their source? As decoding continued, one line emerged with chilling clarity. When the 3 lights cross the great silence, the builders shall rise again. The meaning was debated endlessly. Did the builders plan to return? Or had they never truly left? Were the discs simply predicting a natural cycle of knowledge rediscovered? Or were they a precise schedule for reactivation of something, or someone, beneath the desert? The Vault of Prophecies raised more questions than answers. But one thing had become undeniable. This was no longer just archaeology. It was a clock ticking toward something vast, ancient, and possibly alive. And that something had been counting the stars long before we learned to measure time. Across deserts, mountains, and oceans, the signs began to spread. Quiet, subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. Magnetic fields flickered in regions that had once been stable. Satellite images captured faint geometric glows pulsing from Earth's surface, mirroring shapes first seen on the disks inside the Sahara vault. Skywatchers from South America to Southeast Asia reported unusual star alignments, patterns that exactly matched carvings hidden for thousands of years. These were not random events. They were echoes of something vast, something returning. Scientists searched for natural explanations, but none could account for the synchronized rhythms now appearing across multiple continents. Instruments detected low-frequency pulses beneath ancient sites, resonating in harmony, as if the planet itself was slowly reawakening from a long, deep sleep. Had the builders of the vaults designed a system that could never truly die? One meant not to resist time, but to wait it out? Beneath the sand, beneath the rivers now dry, and the stone now worn. The framework of an ancient world stirred again, answering some silent cue written into the stars, and as more evidence came to light, one question grew louder. Not whether a lost civilization had existed, but whether it had ever truly been lost. What if the Sahara was not a graveyard of ruins, but a cradle of something older than history itself? What if this civilization never perished, but instead chose to vanish? To seal itself beneath the dunes, trusting that the world above would one day reach a moment of recognition. A moment when the children of clay, as the texts called them, would look back into the dust and remember. The return need not be dramatic or loud. There would be no shining ships, no towering gods striding through fire. The return could be silent, unfolding through symbols, frequencies, memories, reigniting what had been placed inside humanity long ago. Were we shaped not only to survive, but to one day unlock what had been buried? Could the bloodlines, the myths, and the echoes, scattered across cultures, be parts of a puzzle leading back to the same origin? And if that origin is awakening, are we ready to face it? Ready to remember that we were never alone, never the first, and perhaps never the final caretakers of Earth? In the calm of night, over the whispering sands, lights now flicker where none should be. The winds carry strange tones that align with forgotten chants. Vault doors sealed for ages tremble slightly, as if stirred by dreams. All across the planet, pieces of a long-buried legacy rise to the surface. Artifacts, voices, memories. The earth, it seems, has begun to speak again. And deep beneath the Sahara, where the ancient heart of this mystery beats, one truth becomes impossible to deny. The sands did not bury the past. They protected it, preserved it, held it close until the sky and the stars aligned once more. Perhaps the final key was not the vaults, or the discs, or the technology, but us, our growth, our questions, our willingness to look past myth and see meaning, to look past fear and seek truth. The gods of old may not have vanished. They may be watching, listening, waiting for the winds to shift, for the symbols to glow, for the builder's song to be heard again, waiting for the moment when the sands would rise and the forgotten would no longer be forgotten. As silence deepens, one final question lingers in the air. Not if they will return, but if we will remember who we are when they do.